Margot folded her glasses and set them beside the ivory folder. Her voice was steady, practiced. Per the most recent legal filing, all assets, properties, and controlling interests in Whitmore Technologies are bequeathed to James Whitmore. Silence stretched. James exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath just long enough to sell the illusion of surprise. Wait, he said, glancing at me, then back at Margot. Everything? Yes, she replied. As of the amended version dated February 14th of last year. James ran a hand through his perfectly trimmed hair. Well, okay. He turned to me. Claire, you knew about this? I didn't, I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from behind glass. James leaned back in the leather chair. He must have trusted I'd keep the company strong. Keep his vision alive. Of course, I said. He smiled, briefly. I didn't return it. Margot shifted in her seat. Claire is still listed as secondary medical proxy, if needed. James barked a quiet laugh. Medical proxy? That's generous. I stood. Are we done here? Legally, yes, Margot said, though her eyes searched mine. There's a box of personal effects for each of you. In the study. Great. Can't wait to see what mementos I earned by being born second. James stood too, buttoned his blazer. Claire, look, this isn't personal. You know how he was obsessed with the business. Thought you were too soft for it. Maybe I am. He looked relieved that I wasn't going to argue. That was his mistake. The study was dim, dust touched. The box with my name on it sat beside the fireplace. I opened it. A photo album. My old chess set. Dad's monogrammed fountain pen. No letter. James came in a minute later, carrying a bottle of bourbon from the side cabinet. You want a drink? No, he poured 2 fingers anyway. You know, I used to envy you, he said. You had Mom. She was always in your corner. She left both of us. She left him, he corrected. You were the only thing she asked about in the divorce papers. Not the house. Not me. I closed the album. That's not envy. That's guilt. He didn't respond. I stood to leave. You know, he said behind me. He told me once you were too principled to run a company. Too rigid. Said you didn't know how to bend. I turned back. And you think that's a compliment to you? He laughed softly. I think it's the truth. 2 days later, I was at Dad's house again. Alone. Margot had left a key with me to collect anything sentimental. The house smelled like dry wood and disuse. I walked to the study, opened the locked cabinet drawer. Inside, ledgers, paper contracts, patent filings, and a USB drive labeled Valentine Update, February 14th. I slid the drive into my laptop. Password protected. I typed James. Unlocked. Folders opened. Transaction receipts. Transfer documents. Then I found it. A private licensing agreement for the Whitmore quantum sequencing software, sold to a firm in Singapore. Sale date, February 8th. Signatory, James Whitmore, with forged POA. I stared at the screen. It wasn't the will that betrayed me. It was the quiet theft before it. I called Margot. Did you know about this? No, she said sharply. Claire, I would have called it out. I swear. Check February 14th. Why the amendment? She was silent for a beat. Your father had a stroke on the 15th. I already knew that. But hearing her say it made it cold and fixed. He changed the will the day after James sold his software. I said, yes. Why? Her voice dropped. I think he found out. And instead of reversing the sale, he rewrote the will. Margot didn't answer. James showed up at my apartment that evening, a bottle of wine in one hand, grin fixed in place. I thought we could talk. I'm busy, I said, not opening the door fully. You're always busy. That's your whole problem. You're drunk. He pushed the door wider, stepped inside before I could stop him. You want to be mad, be mad. But don't pretend like you ever wanted any of it. The company, the stress. You're better off. I saw the sale contract, I said calmly. You signed off on the patent to Gerald Moss. February 8th. He froze. You went through his files? You stole from your dying father. His smile cracked. It wasn't like that. You forged his signature. I had power of attorney. Not for that. And not after he collapsed. He dropped the wine on the table. You can't prove anything. I don't need to. You going to sue me? I looked at him. No, James exhaled, a smirk returning. Then what's this? Guilt trip? I'm just letting you know I know. He laughed. You always were dramatic. I opened the door. Get out. He walked past me slowly. Don't start a war, Claire. I said nothing. Closed the door behind him. Locked it. Then I sat down and opened my laptop. I wasn't starting a war. I was planning 1. Mom hadn't touched the study since the paramedics carried Dad out. I opened the drawer with a stiff tug. Dust curled in the sunlight. Beneath old tax files and a broken stapler, I found the envelope, white, thick, unmarked. Inside, signed transfer. Documents, stamped, notarized. Whitmore Quantum Sequence IP. Buyer, Moss and Venn Biolabs, Singapore. Signatory, James Whitmore. Date, February 8th. Dad stroke hit February 15th. I didn't breathe. I just stared. I thought you'd call, Mom said when I showed up at her condo. She didn't stand up. The TV flickered above her shoulder, muted. I found something. She looked at me, then down at her wine glass. I'm not surprised. You don't even know what it is yet. I know James. Saturday, he sold the patent. The one Dad built the company on. 2 weeks before the stroke. Her lips tightened. Figures. You knew? I didn't know. I suspected he was circling. He forged power of attorney. Of course he did. I blinked. You sound calm. He's your father's son. He betrayed him. And your father betrayed you. It's circular. I found Gerald Moss in a private bar in Tribeca. He wore white linen in March and talked like every sentence cost money. You're Claire. Heard a lot. I doubt that. He smiled. You're. Hear about the licensing deal. You used to work at Whitmore. You knew what that code meant. I also knew it was for sale. Not by the owner. James had POA. No, he didn't. He sipped his drink. You here to threaten me, Claire? I'm here to ask why. He shrugged. James said the old man was going to let it rot. Sit on it until Quantum died on the vine. That's not true. Maybe. But he convinced me. And I liked the price. I leaned forward. He undercut the valuation by half. You knew that. I did. I didn't speak. Gerald glanced around, leaned in. Can I tell you something? You already are. I told James it had come back to bite him. And? He said you were too principled to bite. Back home, I laid the documents on the table. My apartment smelled like lemons and ash. Someone had burned incense upstairs. I didn't feel angry. I felt, final. I called Mom again. He stole it, Eleanor. You don't have to call me Eleanor. I'm still your mother. You haven't been for a long time. She was quiet. Then, you were always Dad's conscience. James was his ambition. Nice division of labor. He thought one of you would balance the other. Well, that failed. She sighed. Do you want my advice? No, I'll give it anyway. Don't fight James like he's your brother. Fight him like he's just another man who underestimated you. I hung up. 2 hours later, James called. Sis. How you holding up? You sold the patent. Pause. I'm sorry you found out that way. That's your apology? It wasn't personal. It was just strategy. You stole Dad's legacy before he even died. I saved it. You think he would have done anything with it after that stroke? You did it before the stroke. I was trying to move fast. Deals don't wait. You forged a document. You know how much red tape I saved him. You didn't do it for him. Another pause. I did it for the company. No. You did it for yourself. He sighed. Claire, you've always made it your job to judge me. I'm not perfect. You're not even loyal. Loyalty doesn't scale. I laughed, but it felt hollow. You're not even ashamed. I'm practical. I hope that keeps you warm. You're not going to the press with this. You don't want to tarnish his name. No, I said. I don't. Then what do you want? I looked down at the forged signature. I want you to wonder what I'm going to do next. James's name was on everything now, business cards, contracts, the embossed plaque on Dad's old office door. I didn't fight it. I just started listening. Another bottle, the waiter asked. James glanced at the label, barely nodding. Why not? Put it on the Whitmore tab. Across the table, a hedge fund rep smiled thinly. You're burning bright, James. Come on, he said, slapping his back. It's called momentum. I thought Whitmore Tech was taking a quiet quarter. James leaned in. That's what we tell the board. What we're doing is laying groundwork. Overseas growth, exclusive licensing talks. You still tied up with Moss? Loosely. We're pivoting. The waiter poured. I sipped mineral water, unnoticed. Later that night, in the elevator of the Whitmore building, I pressed record on my phone. You really think the deal with Frost Labs is clean? I asked. James smirked. Clean enough. They haven't cleared the compliance review. They will. They need our algorithms more than we need their lawyers. What happens if they don't clear? We walk. Pocket the consultation. Fees and sell the rumors to boost valuation. He looked at me. Why are you asking? Curiosity. Margot called midweek. Are you okay? I'm collecting facts. You're sure you don't want to challenge the will? Silence. Gives me room. She paused. What are you planning? Nothing. Yet. James's condo made the papers. $8.4 million, Soho, full floor. A week later, a Maserati. Then a private membership at Castor Club. I watched, noted dates, amounts. Transferred screenshots to a secure drive. He's overleveraging, Margot said, I know. Using the Whitmore name as security. Yes. You're going to let him crash? I'm going to let him be seen. At a gallery opening, he cornered me beside a sculpture of a twisted staircase. You don't say much lately. I'm busy. He sipped his drink. You're watching me, aren't you? I met his gaze. Do I need to? He grinned. If I were you, I would. I'm not you. No. You're still the moral compass. You're still pretending you have a map. Emails flowed. I was CC'd on more than he realized, subject lines like Fast Track NDA, Moss, Pre-IPO Squeeze. Gerald Ree, offshore. Nothing illegal, just arrogant, sloppy. I printed everything. Dated it. Filed it. Do you know he leveraged the house? Margot asked over lunch, our childhood one. Yes. For what? To secure the down payment on a yacht. I raised a brow. He doesn't sail. He doesn't plan. James called on a Friday night. Hey. You got a minute? For what? Just, things are moving fast. Thought we could catch up. Grab dinner? I'm at home. Want me to come over? No, silence, you're mad. No, I said. I'm not anything. He didn't call again for 3 weeks. ATA Tech Conference, I watched him stumble through a keynote, quoting Dad like a prop. Our founder believed in vision. I believe in execution. No one clapped. I stayed in the back. Took notes. Filmed the audience. Margot asked, how long will you stay silent? As long as it serves me. And then? I looked at the file folder in my lap, 40 pages. Indexed, then I'll speak once. James texted last night, do you ever wonder what Dad would say if he saw us now? I didn't respond, but I did wonder, and I knew, he'd recognize the silence. It used to be his weapon, too. The Anrisen boardroom was lined with floor-to-ceiling glass and a view of the Hudson like a lie. It made the city look clean. Helen Rivas shook my hand with a firm grip and eyes that didn't wander. Thanks for making time, she said, of course. She gestured to the empty chair. We're onboarding a new consultant. Quantum sequencing, patent transition strategy. Thought you'd have thoughts. Always. She smiled. Name's James Whitmore. I didn't blink. That's a name. Helen tilted her head. Any relation? I folded one leg over the other. Whitmore's a common name. She nodded, slowly. He said his father was the original patent holder on Q-thread compression. That's true. Well, he's charming. Knows how to pitch. I'm sure he does. I ran into Mark Kwan in the hallway outside the data lab. He looked like time had thinned him, less hair, sharper eyes. Claire? Hi, Mark. Damn. Didn't expect to see you here. Quiet investment, I said, thought you were out of the game. I was. Then I wasn't. He lowered his voice. You know James is here, right? I've heard. Consulting. Big title, little depth. Typical. Still collecting roles like watch bands? He gave a tired laugh. I keep my head down. He doesn't even know I'm on the board. Then let's keep it that way. Helen invited me to a private sit-down 2 days later. He came highly recommended, she said, pouring coffee, by an investor at Kilnstone. Moss. I set the cup down. That tracks. He's got swagger. Says he can push our valuation. Up 20% by Q3. At what cost? Helen leaned forward. That's what I'm trying to figure out. May I ask something? Sure. Have you given him access to IP structure? Some. Not full. Don't. Helen narrowed her eyes. Why? Let's just say the name Whitmore isn't what it used to be. James caught me in the elevator 3 floors up. His voice was all theater. Well, I thought that was you skulking around. I don't skulk. He smiled. Anrisen? Huh? Small world. I looked ahead. Not small. Strategic. Funny. Didn't think you'd come near biotech again. Why? He shrugged. You were always careful. Still am. He stepped closer. Are you here to watch me? I don't need to. James chuckled. You're not still mad about the will, are you? James, I said, you're an asset with an expiration date. I'm the shelf. Mark stopped by my office later that week. He's asking questions, he said. About the board. About you. Let him. He doesn't suspect? No. Mark paused. Why didn't you stop the appointment? Because I wanted him in. You're using the company. I'm protecting it. He nodded. That's the Claire I remember. Helen called. That night, he said you're his sister. And? Is it true? It's true. She exhaled. Why didn't you say something? Would you have hired him if I had? Probably not. Then you needed to see it yourself. Helen was quiet. Then, you think he's a risk? He already is. To us? To you, yes. To me, no. In a strategy meeting, James spoke like a keynote and smiled like a brand. If we license Q-Thread through offshore arms, we skirt the NIH slow walk. Everyone wins. Helen tapped her pen. That's not compliance aligned. We'll massage it. Timing is leverage. She turned to me. Claire? I met James's eyes. We don't sell leverage. We build integrity. James's smile didn't move. Same old Claire. Always playing defense. I prefer long game. Later, in the hallway, he caught up again. You tanked me in there. No. You tanked yourself. I just didn't catch you. You're buying into this place, aren't you? I smiled. That's confidential. You're using a trust. I checked. Then you know. His voice lowered. You think you're clever. No, I said. I think I'm patient. Mark met me on the rooftop terrace. He's burning goodwill. I know. Investors are twitching. Let them twitch. You still want him in? For now. Mark studied me. Why? Because Helen's watching now. And so is the board. What are you watching? I looked down over the river. The moment the name Whitmore stops opening doors. Helen texted the next morning. We need to talk. I replied, I'll bring the file. The quarterly investor update landed in my inbox with no subject line, just the date. I opened it during coffee, skimming until the words caught. Consultant James Whitmore exited Q2 under mutual terms. No call. No warning. No explanation needed. Kira. Taleb found me outside the elevator, tablet clutched tight. Did you hear? I did. She tilted her head. No comment? Why would I? He tanked a licensing pitch. Helen flipped. Mark backed her. Sounds efficient. Kira blinked. You knew he'd implode, didn't you? I didn't answer. She lowered her voice. Anderson's rebalancing shares next week. You might want to move early. I already did. She smirked. Of course you did. I scheduled a meeting with Noah Fairchild the same day. He met me in the East Conference Room, all pressed suit and steady smile. Ms. Whitmore. Claire. Your blind trust has been very quiet. It's about to speak. He tapped his pen. You're going active? Fully. Noah nodded. Slowly. Does Helen know? She will. Are you concerned about optics? I'm managing the optics. He smiled. Then I suggest a clean story. Here's one. A long-term investor sees opportunity in a legacy company with fresh leadership. And your brother? He's not the story. Are you sure? I leaned forward. He's the warning. Helen called me into her office that afternoon. You knew this was coming, she said without preamble. I suspected. He was charming. He was reckless. She exhaled. You bought up the options before I even signed his release. I protect my investments. Helen stared at me. You're not hiding anymore. I never was. Yes, you were. Behind trusts. Behind silence. I'm here now. She leaned back. You want the board seat? No, you want control? No, I said. I want stability. Which looks like control, but isn't. Kira sent over the share breakdown at midnight. I opened it on my phone, watching numbers slide into alignment. 62.1%. Quiet majority. Noah texted the next morning. Drafted a release. Sending for review. Headline, Enrisen welcomes strategic consolidation from long-term investor. I replied, remove the word welcomes. Keep it neutral. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. I ran into Mark in the stairwell, headed down with coffee. You move fast, he said. You warned me. He had no clue. He never looks past the mirror. Mark hesitated. He's going to make noise. Let him. You ready for that? I looked at him. Mark, I'm not preparing. I'm done preparing. He nodded once. Then let's move. The next board call lasted 20 minutes. No votes. No objections. The numbers were clean. The math did the talking. James didn't come up once. That night, Kira sent one line. You're the most elegant storm I've ever seen. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The wind had already shifted. James called 3 days after the layoff went public. No greeting, just his voice edged with disbelief. They ambushed me. I read the memo. You think this was performance-related? Wasn't it? It was personal. Political. Someone wanted me out. Did they? They didn't even give me a warning. One meeting with Helen, and boom, terminated. I didn't say anything. You don't think that's suspicious? I think it's over. He showed up uninvited to my building the next Morning. Armani jacket, no tie, eyes bloodshot. I buzzed him up. You could have told me, he said, stepping inside. Told you what? That they were circling. You never asked. I thought we were past that. We were never anything past convenient. He stared. So now I'm the villain? No. You were the risk. He scoffed. You think you're safer? I think I'm quiet. He paced my living room like it was his boardroom. They sold me out. Moss pulled out of the side fund. Frost Labs froze the licensing terms. Everyone's acting like I'm radioactive. Why? Do you think that is? Someone's pulling strings. Must be exhausting. Blaming ghosts. James narrowed his eyes. You always hated me. I don't feel enough to hate you. He paused. You're cold. I'm accurate. That evening, Noah called. He's sniffing around Kilnstone. Let him. He's asking questions about the trust. Which he won't find. Noah paused. He doesn't know, does he? No, you want to keep it that way? Until it matters. Mark sent a note the next day. James asked to meet. Declined politely. He's unraveling. I texted back, let him the following week. James cornered Kira in the Anrisen lobby. She told me over lunch, he said someone sabotaged the Frost Labs deal. Hinted at legal retaliation. What did you say? I told him we don't discuss confidential partnerships with non-employees. Good. She sipped her tea. He's desperate. Desperation makes him loud. And you? Still quiet. James called again. No hello, I want to know who's buying up the holding companies. You think I'd tell you? You know. Maybe. He exhaled. It's you, isn't it? Do you want it to be? Why would you do that? You needed a soft landing. This was revenge. No, James. This was correction. He came to the shareholder Q&A uninvited. Polished again. Hair trimmed, posture rehearsed. He stood when Helen opened the floor. I have a question, he said. For the majority holder. I turned slowly, stood. You're not on the list. You said this was professional. So let's be professional. Helen's eyes flicked to me. I nodded. James stepped forward. Did you orchestrate the acquisition? Yes. Did you do it through layered trusts to avoid transparency? No. It's disclosed. Page 37 of the quarterly. He started. I own 62%, James. Silence rippled. He blinked. I added, you're standing on my floor now. Afterward, in the hallway, he approached me. Smaller now. Quieter. You bought it all. I did. You were behind it. Since the beginning. Why? Because I could. He looked down. It was never about Dad, was it? No, he looked up. It was about me. No, James. It was about me. The Anrisen quarterly was always dry, earnings forecasts, Q&A filters, nervous consultants pretending not to sweat through their blazers. I preferred it that way until the door slammed open. James walked in, uninvited, unlisted, and smiling. Like he still had keys to the house. Helen turned sharply. Mr. Whitmore, this is a closed session. I'm here as a shareholder, he said, loud enough to echo. You're not credentialed. I was told my name was still on the registry. He wasn't wrong. His 10% hadn't vanished. But 10 doesn't outrank 62. I stood. I believe we've met, I said. He turned to me. Claire. I didn't blink. I'm the majority shareholder now. The room went still. He looked from face to face, expecting someone to object. No one did. I'd like to make a motion, he said. Helen's voice was cool. You're out of order. I have a right to be heard. I nodded once. Let him. He stepped into the circle, adjusting his cuffs like a man preparing for crossfire. This company is bleeding integrity. Strategic partners are pulling out, morale is shaky, and we've lost press traction. He turned slightly toward me. I propose reinstating me to an executive role, co-chair advisory. Optics, partnerships, strategic media. Someone on the board snorted. No one seconded. James smiled thinly. You're making this personal. No, I said. You already did. I built this company's visibility. You mortgaged its credibility. I saved Anrisen from stagnation. You'll save Diorego. And build us for it. He stepped closer. I know you're angry. I'm not. You've been holding this grudge since Dad. This isn't about Dad. Then what? Some kind of power trip? I have power. No trip needed. He looked to Helen. You're going to let her run this alone? She doesn't run it alone, Helen said. She funds it. He turned to the board. You all want this? A silent partner calling the shots. I walked toward the center. I've been silent, I said. Not absent. James opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Let me be clear. You were brought in as a consultant. Not a steward, not a founder. You lost that role before you ever earned it. I still own 10%. Yes, I said. And you'll be treated like any other minority stakeholder. That's rich, he muttered. Considering. Your shares were built on a lie. I didn't move. You mean the lie where you sold off Dad's patent under false POA? That lie? Murmurs around the table. Helen cleared her throat. That part's off record. Actually, I said, I think it belongs here. James stepped back. His voice dipped, like he was trying to restage the performance. Claire. Whatever's happened between us, we're family. Exactly. We can fix this. No, his hands clenched. You want me ruined? I want you irrelevant. You think they'll follow you out of fear? No, I said. They'll follow me because I don't bluff. He didn't speak after that. Not a word. Just stood there while the meeting moved on without him. Helen nodded to security. They didn't touch him. He walked out on his own, stiff and silent. After the adjournment, a junior board member approached me near the glass wall. That was brutal, he said. I looked past him at the skyline. That was overdue. He handed me a glass of water. Congratulations. No, I said. Not yet. That night, James sent one text. You never gave me a chance. I stared at it for a long time, then typed, you never earned one. And hit send. My phone didn't stop vibrating for 3 days. Requests, inquiries, statement demands. I ignored them all, until Leah Bloom sent a handwritten note, no assumptions. Just accuracy. You deserve that much. We met in the courtyard of the Tate building, 2 coffees between us and a recorder sitting silently on the table. You sure you want to go on record? She asked. No, she waited, but I will. She pressed the button. Can you confirm you're Claire Whitmore, majority shareholder of Enrisen Labs? Yes. And you held that position prior to your brother's termination? I did. Did you contribute to that termination? No, did you influence it? I didn't need to. She studied me. He's saying you targeted him. Engineered the acquisition to destroy him personally. He inflated himself. I didn't need to poke holes. Why now? I waited for silence. Then filled it. You never spoke publicly after the will. Or the sale. Because grief makes noise. Strategy doesn't. Leah leaned back. I reviewed the contracts. Your trust structures were clean. Legal. They were. The sale of the Whitmore patent, was that part of your motivation? It was part of the story. But not the ending. Was it personal? Everything is. She switched off the recorder. Off record. I nodded. Did you ever love him? I looked at the skyline. He never gave me the chance. 2 days later, the article dropped. Legacy, Power, and the Woman Who Watched Quietly, Claire Whitmore and the Fall of a Heir. No quotes. No spin. Just facts, lined up like dominoes. James went live that night. CNN Business, she undermined me. Whispered her way through boardrooms. I built that company's edge. The anchor frowned. But she owned it. Ownership doesn't equal contribution. Yet she doubled the valuation in Q2. He blinked. Helen texted. He's spiraling. I replied. Let him. Leah called me 3 days later. He offered me an interview. Take it. Anything you want to add? No, you're not worried. About him changing the narrative? He already did. I just waited it out. The next week, a headline in TechPost, James Whitmore faces SEC inquiry over prior licensing deal. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just forwarded it to Noah with a single line, echoes, not statements. The cemetery was colder than it should have been for April. Overcast sky, brittle wind. I parked at the far end and walked the rest. No flowers in hand. No expectations. Dad's headstone was polished, like someone still thought clean granite. Changed anything. I stood in front of it, hands in my coat pockets. You left him everything, I said. Every stock, signature, illusion of trust. Silence. You knew what he'd do. You watched him cannibalize what you built and said nothing. Still nothing. That used to make me angry. Now it makes you irrelevant. I sat on the edge of the stone bench behind the plot. I found the licensing papers, by the way. Moss signed. James forged. You amended the will the next day. A crow flapped once, then settled on a nearby branch. I used to think that was weakness. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe you were tired. I folded my hands together. You always told me I was the steady one. But you never meant it as a compliment. Just insulation. Something to hold in place while you bet on him. Wind stirred the leaves at my feet. Well, he burned it. All of it. And I built something new. I looked up at the clouds. I didn't come here for peace. You didn't earn that from me. Silence. I came to say, your opinion doesn't matter anymore. I stood. You gave him everything. And I made everything mine anyway. I walked back toward the car, gravel soft under my shoes, leaving him to his quiet. The cemetery was colder than it should have been for April. Overcast sky, brittle wind. I parked at the far end and walked the rest. No flowers in hand. No expectations. Dad's headstone was polished, like someone still thought clean granite. Changed anything. I stood in front of it, hands in my coat pockets. You left him everything, I said. Every stock, signature, illusion of trust. Silence. You knew what he'd do. You watched him cannibalize what you built and said nothing. Still nothing. That used to make me angry. Now it makes you irrelevant. I sat on the edge of the stone bench behind the plot. I found the licensing papers, by the way. Moss signed. James forged. You amended the will the next day. A crow flapped once, then settled on a nearby branch. I used to think that was weakness. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe you were tired. I folded my hands together. You always told me I was the steady one. But you never meant it as a compliment. Just insulation. Something to hold in place while you bet on him. Wind stirred the leaves at my feet. Well, he burned it. All of it. And I built something new. I looked up at the clouds. I didn't come here for peace. You didn't earn that from me. Silence. I came to say, your opinion doesn't matter anymore. I stood. You gave him everything. And I made everything mine anyway. I walked back toward the car, gravel soft under my shoes, leaving him to his quiet. Helen asked to meet on the roof. She always chose elevation when something mattered. She handed me a black folder. Unanimous vote. The board wants you in the seat. I didn't touch it. CEO. Effective immediately. Full comp, full authority. No interim. You've earned it. I looked at the skyline. And if I say no? They'll be confused. Briefly. I'm not confused. She smiled. Didn't think you would be. I turned the folder without opening it. I don't want the chair. You don't want the power? I already have it. Then, what's the hesitation? I came to build something. Not to babysit politics. Helen nodded. You've already rebuilt the company. No, I said. I made space for it to grow. She leaned her arms on the rail. I've been CEO. For 8 years. You'd be better. I'd be different. And you think that's not needed? I think I'm more useful elsewhere. She turned. You want to disappear again? No. I want to design from a place they can't politicize. Helen studied me. You don't need the title. Some victories don't need more climbing. She reached for the folder, then paused. You sure? Yes. She tucked it under her arm. Then name what you want. Control of the Innovation Fund. You'll have it. And freedom to appoint outside collaborators. She smiled. You already knew the answer. I nodded. Now it's on record. We stood in silence a moment longer. Helen said. You know, I underestimated you. I counted on it. She laughed. God help whoever underestimates you next. I'm not waiting to be underestimated anymore. Good, she said. Then go build. The headline slowed. The call stopped. Silence returned, and I welcomed it. People think revenge is loud. They think it shouts. Breaks things. Screams in public. It doesn't. It walks in calmly, takes a seat, and waits. At the firm's 10-year celebration, a junior associate approached me near the catering table. Ms. Whitmore, he said, nervous. Can I ask something? I nodded. How did you do it? Do what? Take the company. Shift the board. Handle the media. It all looked effortless. It wasn't. He hesitated. Then how? By not wasting energy explaining myself. Noah once told me, they'll write books about what you did. They won't understand it. They'll try. They'll use the wrong verbs. Which ones would you use? I'd looked at him. To notice. To wait. To act. At a panel months later, someone asked, what was the moment you knew you'd won? I said, when I stopped needing anyone to notice. The room went quiet. That's the thing about quiet, it changes the air. I never raised my voice. I didn't have to. Silence did the heavy lifting. It always does.